of person needs to choose to be delivered. That's why when he delivered the ones in the Bible, he would turn around to them and say, all right, now you've been made clean, you've been made whole, now don't go and sin no more. He would always give them the choice. But I had picked up a habit of eating pills in this process, and at this time, I'm going to say that I'm about 26 years old, and my life was horrifying. It was just horrifying. And I picked up a pill habit of about 200 pain pills a week. And I would take 7, and I would make myself throw up and take 7 more. And then I would take those and I'd get high from them, and then I would make myself throw up, and then I would take 7 more. That way I could get that fresh opium, and eventually, you know, many times I would lay down in the bed to go to sleep, and I would overdose, and the angel of the Lord apparently would just walk by and tap on me, because I would wake up out of a sleep and my lips be purple and my face be tingling and my hands be tingling from where I had completely and totally overdosed on those drugs. And I was doing self-mutilation on this hand. I have a scar, actually it's this hand, a scar from here to here, where I took a razor blade and opened my arm up, and it busted open about, I don't know if it would open up about that wide on both sides, probably 2 inches by 2 inches on each side, and it was from here to here. And I walked around with it holding open. That way if I went to the doctor, I'd say this thing happened and I need medication, and they would give me those pills. And then I got to go, you know, at that time and have surgery and get put to sleep. And when they put me to sleep, I got more drugs to knock me out, and when I woke up they'd give me another prescription of pills again. So this was my life. I would hurt myself or fake being hurt in order to get medication to feed my drug habit. And this was my life, and this is the way that I lived. And it was just horrifying. And one day, I was on the run now. I'm on the run from the cops, and I just jumped. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't have parents that understood. I did not have nobody that could counsel me, and I knew nobody could help me but God. And I had the crack addict and the crack addiction rather, and I had the pills addiction so bad, and I had these things so bad that I stopped eating, and I borrowed someone's vehicle. When I made this statement to the Lord, I had borrowed a vehicle from someone, and they had actually said, I'll be back in a minute. I'd had the vehicle for a week at that time. The cops were looking for me for that vehicle. And I got some crack, and automatically crack, that spirit has such control over the mind that it gives the person instant diarrhea. Any crack addict will testify that it instantly, as soon as you see the crack with your eyes, you get diarrhea. Well, I had diarrhea in the parking lot of a warehouse. And it was a bloody flux. It was just blood, really, is all that it was. And I knew right then when I seen that I was going to die. And I told the Lord right then, I said, Lord, I know that I have to die. And God, I know that I have to go to hell. I know these two things. And I remember so clearly telling the Lord that I know that I have to die, and I know that I have got to go to hell for what I've done. And just when is that going to happen, Lord? When am I going to die? And when do I have to go to hell? I accept that now, Lord. So I gave up in my spirit and in my mind, and I knew that God would never save me. And I knew that He would never reach in and touch me. And I knew that I was completely out of His reach. I knew that God could not do nothing with me at this point. People couldn't do nothing with me. God couldn't do nothing. So I gave up. And I accepted my fate as a sinner, and that I was a sinner, and that I would go to hell. And that's it for me. And I didn't know what else to do. I had a friend of mine who was a kingpin. He's a cocaine kingpin. Even to this day, he's still a friend of mine, but I don't go around him. I don't even talk to him, but I love him dearly. He kept me one time from committing suicide. He walked into a bathroom we'd been up with. He had some friends and a lot of cocaine, and we'd been up for days, and I'm just depressed, and I'm on a low snorting cocaine, and I took a pistol, and I was going to shoot myself with it, and he walked in to the bathroom, and he took that pistol from me. And he said, this is not the way to deal with this. And he didn't know how to help me, but he did. God used him that day to save my life. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today. The angel of the Lord again stepped in and used someone to help me. He had had some friends up in New York. Now the tempo's going to change. This is where my life starts changing after I'd made the statement to the Lord I couldn't go any lower. On the run from the cops and looking at life in prison. So I jump a Greyhound bus to run. And I jumped a Greyhound bus to a place called Jamestown, New York. And I got up there in hopes that things would be different for some real weird reason. In my mind, I thought that if I got away from the environment that I was in, that would change. Not realizing that I had hopped from 2 to 3 different states in years past, and that had went with me then. I didn't realize the problem was internal, that it wasn't really an external problem, it was an internal influence in my life. So I went on up to New York, and I got off in a strange town. I'd never been there. I went straight to the bars, I went straight to drinking, and I was walking down the side of the road with this fella, the kingpin friend of mine. We were walking down the streets of Jamestown, New York, and there was a party in a house, big house up there, and we just walked in as if we were invited, as if somebody knew us. And we walked in off the street, and we're drinking and partying, smoking marijuana, drinking beer, and that's just not satisfying. That rage in me for the crack and for the pills, and I was going through withdrawal at this point. I'd been about 2 days without anything. And I got into a fight in that place, the awfulest fight you could ever imagine, and I took a knife and I cut someone with a knife. I never did this before. My real dad, now he's notorious for cutting people with knives. That's what he does. He cuts people, and that's why he goes to prison so much. When I walked into the strange thing is when I walked in to a strange house with strange people, a man that I'd never seen before walked up to me, and he handed me a knife that was about 4 inches long, and he said, "Here, in case you need this." And that's one thing that baffles me to this day. Why did he give me a knife? A man that didn't know me was a greater force of the spiritual realm in play at that time, and to bring me into a conversion process. But a knife was handed to me. I put it in my back pocket, and well, I got in there, and to make a long story short, the greatest fight you've ever seen broke out. And it was only my friend. This tested my fighting skills, I guess you could say, because it was me and my friend against about 3 dozen people. And I took that knife, and there was a young man about 17 years old or 18 years old, lunged at me, I guess, and I cut him across his stomach. And I cut him from one side to the other that his guts fell out. And I did not mean to do that. I did not mean to do that. I did not mean to hurt somebody like that. I did not mean to do that, so we ran. The police picked me up. The reason that they picked me up is because I had been stabbed also. I had been stabbed at the top of my shoulder, and blood was just squirting out of my back because of the amount of alcohol that I had consumed, and my clothes were soaking wet with blood, completely covered. I was covered with blood all the way down my clothes, and I had been stabbed through my top right shoulder, very, very, very deep. And it was October, November, and it was snowing on that night, and I was losing blood so fast that I could call the police, or call an ambulance rather, and get help, or I could die on the street because I had nowhere to go, and it was snowing and I was bleeding to death. So a situation apparently had been created in the supernatural realm that forced me into a holding cage. They put me in jail, they arrested me, they charged me with first-degree assault on this young man. I'm going to face 5 years, the next 5 years of my life, in prison. They told me that's what you're going to get for this is 5 years. I said, all right, and I sat down, and I was there for several months, but I had actually manipulated. The shoulder was not hurting at all. It wasn't bothering me at all, but yet I could use that as a turning point for the guards and for the physicians inside the prison to manipulate them into giving me medication. So I talked to them, and they said, we're going to have to bring a narcotic in for this guy. And I'm like, yeah, there we go. Now we're back on track. And they bring me pain pills.